Say my name. I am awake. I am the danger. I am the one who knocks.
Welcome to the next episode of Breaking into Breaking Bad. Clifford and Caleb Humphrey. This is season 2, episode 6, Peekaboo. Before we get going, Cabes, you want to remind everybody of where they can find us and what they need to do to help us?
Yeah, absolutely. So you could follow us on Apple, YouTube, and Patreon. As always, like, share, subscribe. We'd love to hear any and all feedback. Like to hear what you guys think about the show, things we can add as well. But yeah, that's where we're at.
Okay, so we'll start with a short synopsis in case you haven't seen this episode and you're not following along and binge watching the show as you're listening to the podcast. This episode is a dramatic one, I thought. The two main things that happen, we see Jesse, who tries to extract justice, I guess, for those homeless people who robbed what's his name, Skinny Pete,
Yep.
who stole some of their crystal. And Walt had told him, take care of it, deal with it. Don't let it get around that people can rob you with impunity. So he sends Jesse in to deal justice and to be ruthless. And it's sort of comical as well as tragic the way the whole thing falls out, but it doesn't go at all according to plan. Reveals that Jesse is very much in over his head again. He does kind of get out without losing too much of his reputation, but that's going on, and at the same time we have Walt trying to cover up for the exposing of the lie that Gretchen and Elliot were paying for his treatment, because Skylar finds out basically that they're not, and that's a very difficult thing, but it reveals a lot about the relationship between Walt and Gretchen and Elliot and his history with gray matter, and it becomes very complicated. But this whole episode is basically Jesse trying to fix that mess in the homeless people's house, and Walt trying to fix the mess of Gretchen finding out that he has been telling Skylar that Gretchen and Elliot had been paying for his treatment. So that's the whole episode. The title of this episode is called Peekaboo, and if you've seen the show recently, you'll know exactly why. It's pretty straightforward. So there's a very in-your-face sort of exoteric, I guess you might say, component where the kid that Jesse finds in the homeless people's house he plays peekaboo with him, and it's kind of playful. And then at the end, after I guess it's his father is murdered in a very graphic way, he tells the kid to cover his eyes so he gets him outside. So that seems like it. But I think also what's happening too is on an esoteric, on a deeper level, that Gretchen is sort of exposing something with Walt's lie. And so he's having to sort of reveal himself and cover himself in a way that might be a deeper reading of that term peekaboo. So anything else to add?
Yeah, I gotta say, watching this episode and seeing that little kid, it definitely hits different now that I'm a dad and I have my own son, who also kind of has red hair. And the kid was so freaking cute. He played the part very well, with no speaking parts at all. But yeah, this one was tough to watch. You see a lot of just like, oh man, come at you, and yeah, let's break it down.
Okay, so the first thing I noticed is this doesn't have a weird intro like all the others do, whether it's a flash forward or a flashback or some kind
Hmm.
of mysterious thing like the stuffed animal with its face burned off floating in the. It doesn't have anything like that. It just starts
Hmm.
with Jesse finding
Playing
out
with the
where the
beetle.
homeless people. Right, right. And the first thing that comes to mind for me is this is Jesse's crazy eight murder moment where he now has to do a murder. to put it that
Right, and
way,
he
right?
gets like hyped up his
He
own
gets
way.
he yeah, but you notice he has to get high too. So
Yeah,
he
yeah.
he smokes up beforehand
Mhm.
and he has to psych himself up, and that's really comical the way he does that. And then the mail lady comes walking up and
Oh, I
he has
know.
to pretend like he's yeah, it's gonna be high 70s to 72, you know.
Yeah, he just used that kind of like out of the blue.
Yeah.
But I thought it was weird because he was knocking on the door and then he was just being very loud, you know, acting out what he was gonna say, and I'm just like, you really didn't think this one through. You're just kind of going, you know, going with it as you go. But like,
Yeah. But if you remember, it's the same way Walt was with regard to Crazy Eight. Very awkward. Didn't
right,
know how to do it. And critically, he tries to find a way not to have to kill them, right? He thinks if I can just get my money back from them, or if I can get the crystal back from them, then I don't have to kill them.
right.
And so that's, Jesse, he goes in being all tough, but it seems pretty clear right away that he's not at all able to carry out the threats that he's making, right?
Well, right, because it shows that he's still, even in the whole pool of bad choices and decisions that he does, he still has that level of humanity and consciousness still in him. Like he wants to pretend like he's being this part, but deep down, like he doesn't want to cause ill will towards anybody. Like even when they, later on in the episode, when the woman pushes the ATM machine on him, he was like, "No, don't!" Like he was actually like he didn't even want her to do that to him, you know.
Right.
And it just shows that he's still battling his choice of doing what he's doing and the consequences that he has to carry out. You
Right.
know, it's
Right.
it's a struggle.
Yeah, but it's a comical scene, the whole thing, because of how
Yeah,
I mean he's all gonna bust in there and get his money back, and then they're not home. Right? Like, and then he hangs out. He's just waiting for them. I mean,
hmm
it's very clear he doesn't know what he's doing. Okay, so then it flashes to Walt, and Walt is back teaching already.
Yep.
And we have a very awkward conversation between him and his principal,
Assistant principal. Yep.
the assistant principal. Yeah. And she says, look, if there's anything you ever need to talk to me about, in confidentiality, feel free. And he's super awkward. He's not really sure what she's referring to. And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
I think it comes clear later on that when
Mm.
he sees the missing persons sign on his car that some of the kids had drawn on, said, I'm missing my pants or something like that, that
Yeah.
everyone is very conscious of how humiliating of a thing that
hmm
was for him. And some of them are very ready to rub it in his face, and others are sympathetic, but they're sort of overly like they're treating him with kid gloves. So
Right.
but that's a consequence of his deciding to do that plan.
Yeah. You got to think like he probably didn't think of the fallout that it would cause afterwards. Maybe he did, and that's why he did it because he wanted to be so impactful. You know, like why would I do this on purpose? You know, it was so what do you call it? The most expensive alibi he's ever ever pulled.
Right, right, yeah. Okay, and then the chemistry lesson that he's teaching, because I always think this is important. Whatever he's the content, it's
hmm
all about carbon and how everything is made of
Center of all of
carbon.
it.
Yeah. What what's going on there? The whole time I was watching this episode thinking, what's this got to do with carbon? Do you have any
Well,
realizations that
yeah, I
come about
mean,
that?
I was trying to pull in also. I think the main part of it is, he's saying that carbon is the center of all of it, and then he ties it into the story of H. Tracy Hall, the person that created the way that they synthesize diamonds and everything, and then you could tell he was getting like upset. He was like being able to compare himself to Tracy H. Hall as well because he's talking about like he made millions for this company and he got a $10 US bond, note. And that's all he did got all for his work. And then, flash forward to his talk with Gretchen. He's like,
Hmm.
I did all this work. I created it. You stole my research, my all that. Like, so he was trying to like, I like how the comparison of the two, but yeah, I mean, and we get a little bit of history and knowledge onto what happened when he departed gray matter. I think Gretchen mentions it a little bit, like, I came home and your bags were already packed. We're at my parents' house or something like that, and you gave us no explanation. You just left, and then he kind of just switched off and started going on a different tangent. But yeah, back to your question about the carbon. I think that the carbon discussion was predicated over the comparison between Mr. Hall and
Tracy
himself.
Hall and Walt. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's right. So he sees the injustice given, to Hall, and he's seeing himself in the same light.
right.
Where and it's interesting to note, while he sees himself as a character that you should pity, right? Like you should pity this guy Tracy Hall, and you should pity me because we're not treated the way we should be treated. Contrast that with the way everyone is treating him, which is as a loony,
Hmm.
right? Somebody who's got all these sort of weird problems and all of that. So he's getting the opposite of what he's hoping for, what he feels he's what he's owed. But why is everyone treating him like a loon? Because he came up with this plan to make himself look like a loon. But I think again, he thought he could control the consequences to such a degree that it
Right.
wouldn't get out. But now all the kids at the school are treating him that way. So back to Jesse. So Jesse's waiting in the house for the homeless people to come back so that he can be the tough guy and get his money back or his crystal back or kill them, I guess, carry out his threat. And while he's there, he notices that there's a little kid in the house, and the little kid seems like sociopathic in a way. I mean, not doesn't talk, and the condition of the house is, I mean, it's disgusting, right? It feels just gross, and you feel so bad for this cute little kid who's having to live in this filth. And I don't know what Jesse, does he see himself in the kid? Does he feel? Is it just human sympathy he feels for this other human being that's sort of innocent? What do you
I think
think?
it's a little bit of both. I mean, I don't think Jesse, had that same kind of, upbringing or situation. So
Right,
I
we
think it
know he
was more of
didn't.
like,
Yeah,
so we know it's more of a compassion. I mean, think about it. The kid came in, didn't even have any kind of reaction to this stranger in his house. He just goes in
mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
turns on the TV to watch a guy sell knives, and
Right,
it's like just the worst kind of scenario.
yeah. So now he's just hanging out with this kid, but he realizes the kid's hungry, so he starts to take care of him and take ownership of the kid's situation, which is again the opposite of the image he was hoping to convey. Like, I'm a big bad person, I'm going to make your lives difficult, and yet he is now being the parent to this little kid. So he's still
Right.
just waiting. And then it flashes to Gretchen, who calls to check on Walt, which is a very nice thing to do, right? She's being very sympathetic, human. Last time she spoke, it was a little awkward, I think, to Walt because he had said, "No, thanks, I don't need your money." But she still wanted to just check on him. And she leaves the voicemail, and Skylar calls and says, "Thanks for, you know, been meaning to call you. Thank you so much for paying for Walt's treatment. It's meant the world to us." And Gretchen is like not sure
Hmm.
what to think. So we don't know Gretchen. We don't kind of know her angle. We don't know what she's about, but she's a person that you, unlike, for example, Marie, maybe you want to believe her. Like you think she's a good person and that she doesn't have a motive or an angle, an agenda, malice in any way. She's just kind of there to kind of help people. And,
Hmm.
she doesn't really. So she drives to the house and meets with Skylar, and she completely plays along. Does she do that because she's giving Walt the benefit of the doubt that there's some reason why Walt did this, and I'm going to let him explain it to me before I expose him?
Yeah, I think she's a little bit of that. She's just intrigued, really. And you can tell when Walt comes in, he he has this look of just being completely defenseless on how to
Mm,
control this situation.
yeah,
Because like he walks in slowly and he's just thinking like, how am I going to spin this? Like she's obviously gonna not play long. And then Flynn, Walter Jr. says thank you so much, you see his face, and I was just looking at Walt at this time. His face is just pure like, please, oh, please, oh, please, oh, please, oh, please, don't say it.
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
and when she responds that way, it was it was like, oh man, like I gotta thank her, fix this. I got to explain ASAP, I'm gonna walk her out real quick. And so, geez, yeah.
Yeah. So
But
then
the
they
the
go
thing
in.
that I thought the thing that I thought was kind of crazy is like he hasn't shown any ill will or anything like that. So if I'm Gretchen, I'm thinking, okay, there's obviously an explanation for this. And when he goes out there and he's like, hey, listen, I am very sorry. I'd love to explain everything. She just kind of just leaves, And I was watching the episode just before this with my wife, and she kind of brought that up too. It's just like, why would she be so upset without wanting to hear it? If it's me, I want to know the reason why, and she just kind of drives off, and I thought that was kind of strange.
Well, let's think about it. Why would she be upset? I think there's a justice matter where she feels like she's been given something she doesn't deserve, right? I mean, you've got these people who are saying, it really tugs at your heart when Walter Jr. is like, "Thank you for saving my father's life," and
Sure,
she
yeah.
has to take credit for that, but she knows she doesn't deserve it, and she doesn't. It's a matter of justice. She doesn't want what is not really hers,
Hmm.
and I think there's obviously lots of history between the two of them, and when they sit down and talk later on up in Santa Fe, it's clear that there's some kind of weird dynamic between them where I'm kind of privy to taking Gretchen's side on this. When she says, "Look, I came back and your bags are packed and you just left." Like that seems to be from her perspective Walt's MO, that he just leaves. He just, what does she say? "You left me. You abandoned me." So she's seen him do this before, act independently, just do things without consulting her, without talking to her. And in a way, he's using her, and he knows that, right? And it's really critical what he says, because justice was a big theme here. He's like, "I don't owe you an explanation for why I did it. I do owe you an apology for involving you in it." Right? But he's very clear. I'm only going to give you what I owe you and nothing more.
Right.
And what is he? What is he? He says, I apologize for involving you, but I'm not going to
Yeah.
say why I involved you because you're not strictly owed that." And he's right. He doesn't have to tell her, but she's like, what why wouldn't you? It's a human thing to
Right.
kind of, when you've wronged somebody, you pay back with a little interest, right? I mean, like let's just look what you do. And
Well, I
she's
thought
thinking, what could possibly be the reason why would it be so bad that you couldn't tell me?
I thought it was a little strange how whenever he is called out by anyone else, especially Skylar, he has an answer for everything. But when Gretchen calls him out, he doesn't go straight to a lie. He just says, that's none of your concern. Like
Mm.
he tries to be, it's almost like he respects Gretchen more than he does everyone else, maybe because of the history. But like anywhere else, when he's been called out about something, he immediately goes into a lie of some proportion, and you see it later on with Skylar. He just goes into it, and it was so easy for him to just go into this lie, but with Gretchen, he doesn't go that route, and I was surprised that he didn't go that route. But there has to be some kind of different kind of respect, or he just was off his game.
See, I think
um
it's the opposite. I think it's the opposite. I think it's that he doesn't respect her. I think that's part of the answer because it's all, again, it's all justice. He's in his mind, he's saying, "You, Gretchen and Elliot, you owed me something, and I didn't get that, and I
mm,
was treated unjustly by you." Right? And now he's only going to give her what he owes her and nothing more. Right? He's just thinking in terms of who owes what to whom. Right? But
right.
he has a kind of disdain for her. I mean, he hates that he owes her something. He hates that because he's tried this whole time, right? When he turned down their offer to pay for his treatment, he's like, "No, no, no, I don't want to owe you anything." Right? Now he owes her something. And that upsets him. But when when we think about it, he could have come up with a reason, but he has such disdain for her. His only response is "F you,"
Yeah,
right?
that was so intense too. When he said
It
that, like,
was.
what did she say? I feel sorry for you. I mean, that was like the biggest like slap in his face, like big time.
Well, because he is, and she calls it out, I think, right? Pride,
Yeah,
right? He's full of pride. And he's so proud that he won't take help when he needs it. And he won't give her a little bit more than exactly what she's owed in this human to human interaction. She's agreed to meet with him. She didn't have to do that, right? He's the one who said, "Let me explain," right?
hmm
When he comes out on the driveway. So I mean, the main thing all this does is reveal that there's a lot in the history that we don't know about. And it seems when Gretchen says you left me, you abandoned me, it sounds like they were in a relationship, right? They
right.
weren't just, yes, he was partners with Elliot, but he was also in a relationship with Gretchen. And so
hmm
what's the story go? We don't know exactly, but he leaves, they break up, and then she gets with Elliot, right?
Right.
That's the story. And so as Walt finds out about all that, whether it's his fault for leaving or whatever, we don't know. That's still just a sucky situation to be in. But again, the point is that there's a lot of history, and that's left him bitter and proud, and to the point now where he's willing to hurt his own interest before humble himself in front of Gretchen.
Yeah, I mean, he was throwing it all out there. I mean, like he didn't care about the big picture at this point. He just wanted to say what he wanted to say, and I don't know if this is his Heisenberg kind of overtaking the Walter
Hmm.
at the conversation, but like normally he's all about surviving and keeping his image intact and everything, but at that point he was, F you. Like it was, I'm gonna do what I
Yeah,
gotta
no,
do.
that's good. So when he's dealing with Skylar and he knows that he's wrong, he's constantly apologizing, right? And remember what he says that a couple episodes back, I apologize for everything. Right? Like
Yeah,
he doesn't even know all that he's done. He's like, I just need to cover it all, right? He's apologizing. He's owning stuff that doesn't even belong to him, right? He's falling over himself trying to apologize and take ownership of that. Here, when he tells Gretchen F you, I think what he means is I know I'm wrong and I don't care.
yeah, yeah.
And he wants her to know that he doesn't care, right? Whereas with Skylar, I mean, we're pretty good now. We know Walt well enough to know when he's kind of putting on this. Hi, yeah, I made great breakfast. What's everybody doing today? Like when he's being super fake and overly, compensating for his lie. But with Gretchen, it's this very honest Walt. So, okay, anything else with Gretchen? I mean, it's interesting the way it ends, I think, where she refuses to be involved in Walt's lie at all. And so when she calls Skylar right after that and says, we're cutting off the funding, I was thinking through that. That was a very interesting play on her side, right? Because I think what she did is she sort of tried to cut a middle ground between, on the one hand, exposing Walt and causing all kinds of, she doesn't even know what harm that would cause between Walt and Skylar
hmm
and Walter Jr. But she's also, on the other hand, not going to continue to be let herself be involved in the lie.
Right,
So it seems to me that that was a brilliant move on her part to cause the least amount of harm possible.
right. And Walter kind of jumped at that opportunity to go into yet another lie, which you could
Right.
tell he has gotten better at lying over time. I think I said this before, but that saying, you practice anything, you'll get good at it. And you could tell that
Mm-hmm.
he is getting better at lying, and he just kind of went into it. He set the stage and was, there was some terminology used, and like he really
Right.
just kind of builds it up and creates a foundation, and it's just all this stuff.
Right. But it was perfect because you remember what he calls them, how he describes them. prideful people.
Oh yeah, that was
You're like, are you
another
kidding me?
prideful people. Yeah, but Skylar believes it. This is the first time that she's actually fallen for one of
Huh.
his lies since her calling out all of his lies. But at the very end, when she said the whole, but they still drive a Bentley. It looked like she was trying to put two and two together, but like this is the
Yeah,
first time where she
but that's
kind of
because it's
put it
not just Walt doing the lie, right? That's what's the injustice of it, is it's also
right.
Gretchen. It looks like he
Yep.
had Gretchen call and come by and pretend like so she's thinking, yeah, there's no way he orchestrated that. And he didn't,
Yeah.
you know.
And the build
But
up also when Skylar says Gretchen called me, and then the
yeah,
pause, and he's just like, oh, boy,
right,
how am I
right.
gonna, let's just see what she says, and go
Yeah,
from there. And
right. But him
dodged a
calling them
bullet.
them proud was just I
Yeah,
mean, I think you'd call that like poetic irony or something. I mean,
yeah,
because he's the epitome of proud himself, so much so that he can't even see his own pride.
yeah. And he was so relieved when he heard that Gretchen had used that excuse, how she what she told Skylar, because then it
Oh,
was
of
like, oh
course,
man,
yeah.
I could use this and this and this, and I can go here and boom. Phew, yeah, he definitely is getting much better.
But let's think about the problem that poses now. Now he's got to come up with an excuse for how he's getting the money.
Hmm.
He's going to have to find a way, we don't know how, to explain to Skylar, hey, it's okay. We don't need Elliot and Gretchen's money because I got this new income, right? He's going to have to tell her that somehow.
Right.
Another quick thing I wanted to notice about Gretchen and Elliot before we go back to Jesse is interesting that they don't have any kids. Well, I mean, what does
Yeah,
that
that's true.
what does that kind of signify here? You know, they seem to be very humanitarian, philanthropic, they want to help out. But it seemed to me when Walter Jr. is telling her, "Thank you for saving my dad's life." I mean, in a way, that's moments like that are probably the closest thing that she'll ever have to a kind of son moment, where she's
Hmm.
feeling like I'm helping save this family and I'm getting to, in a way be motherly to this kid. Anyway, I
Yeah.
don't know if that means anything, but it's just interesting that they don't have any kids, I thought. Okay, so back to Jesse. So this goes from just comical to hysterical when Jesse's getting them to give over all the contents in their
All the hiding
pockets. And
spots. Yeah.
right. And then the guy's like, I've got this ATM that I stole. And he tells Jesse, he just picked it up and there was no violence whatsoever. And then, but we see he actually
Victimless crime.
murdered. Right, right. But he murdered the Quickie Mart owner or whatever it was.
Hmm.
He got it. But instead of saying, "Oh my gosh, you don't know how to open this thing," you don't think that really smart people made it really difficult to open. You know, Jesse plays along and says, "Well, great idea. Let me just sit down here while you hit at it with a sledgehammer for a few hours, and I'll just give credence to this idea." He could have said, "No, that's a stupid idea. I'm going to come back in 24 hours or something, and if you have them, I don't know, maybe that would have been dumb too because they probably would have just left." But
Right. He was playing it by the seam of his pants the whole time. He just didn't know how to handle it. I mean, you got the
right,
kid, you
right.
got two people that are just freaking, you know, all on all sorts of stuff. What was it? Heroin and meth and all sorts of, like
Well, maybe
he,
so.
he
Right.
didn't
So
know.
that reminds me again of the Crazy Eight situation where he's like, "Well, I'm going to deal with them logically. Like you. Yes. How about you do the thing? You get the money out of your ATM machine and give it to me, and I'll trust you. You know what you're doing." I mean, what he should have done, I guess, if he was a ruthless drug dealer, is just shot them both and then found a way to make sure that everybody found out about it. That would have been the most valuable, I think, the most valuable thing for him is to kill them and let the whole city know that he killed them violently because they robbed him, and you don't ever want to cross him, right? That was sort of his goal, right? Just getting the money back or the crystal back wouldn't have accomplished his goal because the next person would think, okay, well maybe I'll get away with it.
Yeah, I
So
think he kind of changed his goal a little bit from making a point to, all right, where's my money? And you hit the nail on the head with this because he doesn't have the consciousness to the ability to get rid of it and just do what is necessary for his type of role. But he does know meth heads because he was one or is one, right?
Yeah,
So he's trying to figure out how to handle the scenario while keeping it conscious and dealing with meth heads that he knows he's not going to get anything from. So it's like he's just hoping for something to surprise him at this point. And yeah, he's
right. And
definitely
then
screwed.
thrown into that is this kid element, which is just highly sympathetic element that
Hmm.
really that Jesse connects with, and he doesn't want to do anything to hurt the kid. So if you've seen the episode, you know what happens. The husband is, the male, the guy is trying to access the ATM from the bottom, and they have it tipped up, and he has this ongoing argument with the woman, and she pushes the ATM on his head and crushes him. And what's amazing is she goes right for his drugs,
Hmm.
right? I mean, that's how far gone she is.
Oh yeah.
He's sitting there bleeding out, dead, crushed. She doesn't have one thought of remorse or, ew, there's blood all over my floor now. She goes right for his pockets to try and get the crystal. And then Jesse makes his exit, right? And calls 911, takes the kid out, puts him outside. So the question I had was Jesse successful in your mind?
Yes, I do believe so. Like, one, I think he feels good about taking the child out of that situation and will hopefully be in a better one with the cops come. So he feels a little bit of like success there. He was
Okay, so
able to,
that's a new goal, but he accomplished it. Yep.
right. It was a surprising but good goal, right? It's going to make
Yeah.
him feel good about the scenario. But he was also
Right.
able to get money, and one of them is dead, and the other one is, probably going to overdose at this point, maybe. And so ultimately, I feel like he's going to come out of there feeling good.
Well, you're right. He's going to get the money. The woman's probably going to be put in prison and charged with murder.
Hmm.
The kid's going to be put in child protection services of some kind. So he's successful on those fronts, but his reputation, I don't think it does anything for his reputation, right? Because
Mm.
because of the murder, he can't take credit for it, right? I mean, he's desperate to try and take his fingerprints off of it. I mean, he might. We'll see what happens, but
Yeah,
uh,
we'll
at,
see what
at
happens,
this
I
point,
guess.
he was lucky to get out of there alive because of, when he was hit over the head and they took his gun and all. I mean, he was really lucky.
You're right.
Okay, well, that's all I got. Anything else from you?
No, I think that's it. Yeah, no, it was I will say that the next couple episodes, it's definitely going to start ramping up. So I'm excited to go to the next one for sure.
Okay, well, we'll leave it there with Jesse and Walt and see y'all in the next episode.